Hello, good day. This is Dinesh Kumar, a student of the Masters in Engineering Management program, July 2020 batch. In this presentation, I'll try to explain the complete management process with respect to a company which is primarily in an oil and gas consultancy business and offers a design solution to its clients as per its requirement and the concerns. Terming what a management process is, going ahead with Wikipedia, management process is a process of setting goals, planning, and of controlling the organization and leading the execution of any type of activities such as a project or a process. Moving further, as originally recognized in the work of a French coal mine director Henri Faure in his 1916 book Administration Industrielle Generale, the management process consists of 5 functions: planning, organizing, staffing, leading, and controlling. In this work, he insisted that these 5 management functions are applicable in any industry, which seems to be quite true. Hence, moving forward with the first of the 5 functions of management process, that's planning. As per Cambridge Dictionary, the process of arranging, deciding, or coordinating activities in an organized way so that they are successful or happen at the same time is what is termed as planning. It has various elements which are generally can be defined as defining the aspects, identifying the deliverables, creating schedule maps of the paths, and delivering a planning package. So looking into these elements one by one, defining aspects, an element of the planning wherein the comprehending and aligning of the scope of the work as per the requirement of the project is done. The elements of the scope of work generally are the project overview, which talks about the project deliverables, the scope in detail, the schedule summary, the execution time by when the project has to be completed, and the project management. So these are the things that are defined into the element within the planning. Next, we can have the deliverable identification, wherein various deliverables which are supposed to be produced in order to have execution of that particular project needs to be identified. So this deliverable list are being collaborated with the various disciplines involved into the activity of developing or executing the project. So that is one of a key activity done during the planning phase itself. Creating schedule maps and paths, the another one wherein various charts and the maps are plotted against with respect to the schedule, with respect to the deployment of the personnels, and with respect to the cost and the budget. And then the complete planning package is supposed to be delivered or supposed to be framed, which talks about the various elements within: critical path, manpower histogram, S-curves, and the budget allocation. These happens to some of the underlying elements of the planning package. Critical path actually is the longest sequence of activity in the project plan, which must be completed on time for the project to complete on due date. This is as per the businessdirectory.com. So the critical path in the execution of the project is identified. The manpower histogram needs to be plotted. That gives a schematic or the graphical representation of the manpower resources to be included or deployed during the entire schedule or the duration of the project execution. And normally it's a general curve which talks about a bell sort of structure wherein we do have smaller sections of the person getting involved into the beginning, and later on when more and more people get involved in depending upon the way project shapes up, that's the mass of the public getting involved, and then further it tapers down when the common goal of the project is being achieved. So people starts getting demobbed from the project. S-curves, they are defined, which talks about the late plan and the early execution plan. S-curve primarily is the definition stands for the sigmoidal, which is a mathematical term related to the way the curve is derived. One can, however, think of it as an S-curve that can predict how a business will grow over its life cycle. The important aspect, the budget allocation with respect to the various disciplines who would be working onto this project in order to shape up the project and have the deliverables met. So that's the budget allocation is done depending upon the nature of the scope of the project, which discipline is going to work, and the efforts are estimated and provided for the key disciplines to be working on the project. Moving further with the next function of the management process, that's organizing, which talks about defining the roles, the procedure development, the tools arrangement, and the interfaces identification as some of its underlying elements. So looking them one by one. Defining roles particularly is identifying the key personnel who are going to work on that particular project, and then developing the organogram within the discipline, who is going to be reporting to whom, and what is the nature of the work has to be handled by the person. Then again, the procedure development with respect to the scope, the cost, the allocated budget that has been given, and with respect to the schedule of the project, the procedure has to be developed. It depends upon the type of the project, depends upon the expectations of the client, and depends upon how urgent the requirements are. The procedures are accordingly, which has already been framed, may need to be tweaked or may need to be redefined in order to meet the expectations of the requirements of the project. Next, we do have another element called tool arrangement, wherein the tools which are going to be utilized in order to execute the project, they needs to be arranged, interfaces needs to be identified with respect to the key underlying features or the aspects that are going to be interfering into the project. Maybe it may be example the subcontract, it may be the government body, the approval that need to be required from the government bodies, or it may be the operations or the maintenance team needs to be contacted and needs to be provided the inputs in order to have the project interface, or it may be some of the parallel project that's going on and which in effect is affecting this particular project which is under execution. So these are the interfaces which needs to be identified and needs to be organized and needs to be catered to at different point of time during the execution of the project. So this particular function, organizing, primarily defines all these aspects and the elements. Moving further to the next function, that is staffing, which again is quite important into the management process, and as the name suggests, it's the allocation of the staffs, but not only limited to that, but it got various underlying elements within it. Looking into one by one is mobilizing the identified resource, training and development the key personnel, the team building efforts, and the competency assessment. So these are the few of the functions or few of the elements that are within the staffing. The resource needs to be mobilized as per the requirements, and during the course of the execution of the project, they need to be trained, they need to be developed as per the scope or as per the project or as per the company practices and the philosophies, as per the requirements of the client, requirements of the company. So these training and development time and again are being imparted by the staffing, the HR. Team building efforts time and again needs to be looked into for the project personnel in order to create a harmony within the colleagues who are working under the project in order to get a well-being and a more collaborative efforts. Again, at times the competency assessments are done, the appraisals program are taken care. These are done in order to understand the weaknesses to the strength and provide the further inputs and the requirements as the time progresses for a person into the organization. So these are some of the few key elements that are there within the domain of staffing function of the management process. Next important function is directing and leading, and here leadership is not talked as a general but in fact as a function of a management, how the management wants a leaders to behave or to respond to the particular project scenario during its execution. So it's not a general function in general leadership, but in fact it's a function of the management and function of the execution of the particular project. Here the leaders or the delegation roles, the roles that are there are the delegation, building on the frameworks. It's the leaders who is going to supervise and provide the mentoring time and again, adhere to see whether the quality procedures are getting adhered or not, and to get the changes recorded and accordingly respond to it. So looking into these elements one by one. Delegation of the work at the sub-levels as per the hierarchy requirement. The guiding to the pathways and building upon the frameworks that is available within the organization or as a go-by of a different project of the similar nature, or onto the framework of some past experience with the project or the company has executed. Mentoring and supervision of the staffs in order to see, in order to control the efficiency and various other aspects. Look into the quality procedures and their adherence, as the organization is to bound by the quality procedures that is established, that it ensures is being implemented for the execution of the project. This needs to have a checked. Identify and managing the variations. Again, this is a very critical and important aspect which talks about creating and identifying the changes that has happened from the very beginning scope of the work. Time and again during the execution, it can be found out that there is a change into the quality, change in the amount or the level to which the expectations are there from the company or from the client. So these particular changes needs to be recorded in order to communicate with the client, communicated with the customer, in order to understand whether the thing that is to be delivered are exactly what it wants to be, and if some additional resources, if some additional costs, if some additional budget needs to be allocated, that the same invoicing needs to be done. So this is again a very key and an important aspect of managing the variations, wherein the changes that comes in due course of the execution of the project needs to be figured out with respect to the expectation or the scope of work that has been defined earlier. And these changes needs to be presented to the company, presented to the customer for their alignment, for the alignment of the project team, and to get additional budget allocation or to the additional schedule timing requirement. So that is what the directing and the leadership function of the management process is. Moving further to the last of the functions, that's controlling, which generally talks about looking the things from the back angle, looking something how things have been fared well with respect to what it was charted at the very beginning of the project. So that is what the controlling element keeps on coming in and then as the project is executed after first month, second month, or during the time frame with respect to what it was planned in the very beginning. So controlling talks about the aspects as reviewing the project performances, the budget and the expenses, to what extent it has been, the expenses, recovery plans if required, whether the project or whether the execution of the particular job is with time or not, what will be the recovery plan in order to address the delay or address any of the unplanned activities that has crept into and to complete the project within the specified time. To redefine some of the objectives. Looking in detail, the project performance needs to be reviewed with respect to the planned progress, the actual progress, and the slippages that there has crept into due to the advancement of the project and because of XYZ reasons. The budget and the expenses needs to be relooked within the profit margin that is there left with the company at the project execution. Recovery plans needs to be met in order to identify the slippages, identify the challenges, prepare the recovery plans, and reforecast the schedule, reforecast if required and time permits and the customers is willing to for the execution. With the redefined objective of improvising the performance, acknowledging the efforts of the persons who has been tremendous, the team development as required in order to boost, remotivate them, and if required, some marginal restructuring here and there in order to fine-tune the balance, fine-tune and try to get the best balance, coherence within the entire team. So that is why the function, controlling, and the elements are quite important, which tries to gear up and brings the project onto the path which it has been assigned or which it has been asked for. So moving further, what has been observed till now is these 5 aspects are involved, these basic 5 functions are involved, but the key ingredient that is there within all of these functions are the problem solving, the decision making, and the communication, the interface management, the way it is being communicated and reciprocated, not only towards the counterpart but within the peers, within the groups, within the team. So these are the basic functions that are there within all the 5 functions that has been described as a management process. In a whole, it comprises of a behavioral aspect like decision making skills and the interpersonal skills, and comprises of elements which are not in general but attributes that are as a function of management. We have a plan, we have leaders, we have the various bodies that are involved into their domain, but as a purpose, as a function of the management, as a function of the project, it's the way the people collaborate together is what is being looked into as a management process. So that was all, a brief overview on the management process. Thank you. Have a good day.